Hi, good morning and welcome to our first online geography classroom. Now, I know lots of you are at home at the moment and you're studying and you're doing your maths and you're doing your English and some great cooking, but I also wanted to take this chance to teach you some geography. Now, geography is a subject that you don't often study when you're at primary school, but it's definitely something that you do when you're a bit bigger and you go to secondary school. Now, geography is the study of the whole world. Now, that's quite a lot to learn and can seem a little bit overwhelming, but what I'm hoping is that over the next few weeks, we're going to do one geography lesson each week, and I'm going to teach you about lots of different things that are really important to geographers. Now, the first thing that geographers always need to know about is maps. We love maps. So the first session today is going to be all about creating a map, and that's going to form the centre of the rest of the project that we're going to do. Now, for today's session, there are the following things that you're going to need. So you're going to need a piece of paper, probably the bigger the better. So if you have an A3 piece of paper, that would be great. You're definitely going to need a pencil. You're going to need a ruler. If you've got one, it would be amazing if you had an atlas, but if you haven't got one, you can use one that's online. And then after that, the last thing you're going to need is some colouring pencils. I haven't put it on the list, but you might need a rubber just in case you make some mistakes. Now I'm going to pause the video for a second so that you have a chance to go and collect all the things that you need, and I'll meet you back here as soon as you've got them. Okay, hey team, welcome back. Hopefully now you have got your piece of paper. It's important. You have got your pencil, you have got your ruler. If you haven't got a ruler, then you can just use a book or something like that. You have got your atlas and you have got your colouring pencils. Now, the focus of today's session is that we are going to learn about some really important places in the world. And these places are called continents. Now, there are 7 continents on this planet, and a continent is a group of countries that belong together, either because they're really close to each other or because they share the same landmass. Now, what we're going to do, activity 1, is this. I want you to find your atlas, or I want you to go online, and you're going to find the page that has a world map on it. Now, an atlas is really useful because it has a contents page on the inside. Now, a contents page is a list of all the things that are in this book. So I'm going to look down my list and I'm going to find the one that says the world. And on this atlas, it says the world countries. In your atlas, it might say the world political, or it might just say world map. So that says the world countries, and it tells me that that is going to be on page 52 and 53 in this book. So turn to page 52 and 53. There we go. So you guys do the same thing. Find that page in your atlas. Okay, hopefully now you've found that page. Now, the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to spend a couple of minutes just geeking out about maps, okay? Because maps are amazing. Maps are the tools that geographers use to help us understand the rest of the world. And we used to, before phones and before the internet, kids used to sit and play and read with maps all the time. Now we've got GPS and things like that on our phones, it makes it a little bit different. But what we're going to do, we're going to geek out about maps. So what I would like you to do is just to have a look and see if you can find the United Kingdom, where we live. Now, I'll give you a clue. It's right in the centre of our map. So once you've found the United Kingdom, the next thing I want you to do is just spend a couple of minutes looking at maybe all the places that you've either been on holiday. So you might have been to France, you might have been to Spain. Some of you might have been as far as Australia if you've got family over there. And I want you to find any countries that you think you might have heard of or that are interesting. Right, I'm going to pause the video, take 2 minutes to have a really good look at your map. Okay, welcome back team. So you've had a couple of minutes looking at all the different places that are on this map. Now, what we're going to do today is we are going to draw our own version of this world map. Now, to do that, we're actually going to learn about some important parts or things that are on this map that you can use, I suppose, to help you navigate, find your way around it. Now, the first line that I want you to look at is this one that my finger is on. Now, can you see that there is a line that runs all the way across the centre of the Earth? Now, that basically splits the world in half. We have all the countries and the continents and the seas that are above it, and we have all the continents and the countries and the seas that are below it. Now, this line has a really important name, and it's called the equator. Now, the second line that we're going to look at today is this one, this line along the top. Now, if you have a look from where my finger is and points down, this line here separates the Earth in half, but it separates the east from the west. Now, we're going to draw these lines on our piece of paper because they're going to help us when we draw the rest of this map. So the first thing that I want you to do is to take your piece of paper and I want you to fold it in half lengthways, okay? So you're going to fold it in half lengthways so it has a crease across the middle. And then I want you to fold it in half that way so that your piece of paper now has 4 squares on it. Okay, I'm going to pause the video to give you guys a chance to do that. Okay, now once you've got your piece of paper like this, the next thing that we're going to do is we are going to take our ruler and we're going to take our pencil, I've lost mine, and what I want you to do is where the creases are on the page, I want you to draw a straight line, or as straight as you can get it, with your ruler, okay? So that you now have got 4 separate areas on your map. Right, everybody draw your lines. Okay, so you've now got your piece of paper, which has got your lines on it, and we're going to add 2 really important labels. Now, I want you to do this with your pencil because it's easy to make a mistake here. Now, the first thing we're going to do is you're going to label the first line, the one that splits the page from top to bottom, and that line is called the equator. The next thing you're going to do is you're going to label the line that splits the page in half, and we're going to label that one the Greenwich Meridian, okay? So, if you have a look, we're going to label the first one the equator, which is here, so the equator, and then the second line that we're going to label is this one, the Greenwich Meridian. So, take your time, pause the video, add those 2 labels. Okay, now you've done that and you've got your piece of paper that has the equator and it has the Greenwich Meridian. You've labelled 2 of the most important lines on our Earth, because these lines, as I say, they separate the Earth from the top bit to the bottom and from the east to the west. Now, we're going to learn about compass points in our next session because otherwise there's too much to do in one day. But the next thing that we need to do is we need to add our continents to this piece of paper. Now, doing this is going to be tricky. So you've got 2 choices. Some of you, if you want to, you could lay your piece of paper down over the top of your world map and you could trace it if you wanted to. Now, as you can see for me, I can't see through my piece of paper, so I'm going to have to draw this by hand. Now, this is going to take time, and it is going to be tricky, and it's definitely not going to be perfect. But what we're going to do is we're going to concentrate on several key things that can help us to make this easier. Now, the first continent that I actually want us to draw is going to be Antarctica. So, can you find Antarctica on your map? And I'm going to pause the video while you do that, and then I'm going to show you how to draw this on. Okay, So now we've found Antarctica, you will see that it is right down at the bottom of your map. Now, I'm not expecting you to draw every single inlet and every single bump in this line, but we're going to do it as carefully as we can. So, can you now, and I'm going to do it at the same time, draw Antarctica onto your piece of paper, okay? So, it's going to start here and go all the way. It's got a little pointy bit across the bottom. Okay, so that's my Antarctica. Now, you can tell it's not perfect, but I'm doing the best that I can, okay, because I can't trace this. So I'm going to pause the video. You guys draw your Antarctica. Make sure it's as close as you can get. Okay, well done, team. So you should all have your map now with your Antarctica on the bottom. Now, the next thing, the next continent that we're going to draw is this one. So we are going to draw Australia and New Zealand, okay? Because they're the two main countries that make up this continent. Now, I always think Australia looks a little bit like a dog's head and a cat's head on the other side. So what we're going to do is we are going to draw them. Now, this continent is actually below the line, the equator line that we drew. So we've got to make sure that we draw it at the bottom below that line. So I'm going to draw it on now, and then you're going to pause the video and we're going to see what we've done. Welcome back, team. So you should now have Australia and New Zealand, which is made up of two different islands at the bottom of your map. Right, the next continent that we're going to draw is tricky because part of it sits above the equator and part of it sits below. Most of it sits below. Now, the continent we're going to draw next is called Africa, and this is that continent. Now, Africa is enormous, it's huge. And they often say that it looks like a rhinoceros's head. And if you have a look here, you can see that here is the horn of the rhinoceros. And they actually call that the Horn of Africa. Now, most of Africa sits below that line, the equator. So if we have a look here, we can see that the equator runs across the middle. But we also have a large portion of it above the line. So you're going to try and draw a point below the line. Then we're going to remember to draw the horn above it. And we're going to draw the rest of the continent like a big head sticking out the side. Now I'm going to pause the video. I'm going to draw it. You're going to draw it. We'll see what we've got. Welcome back, team. So I'm not sure it's perfect, but I've definitely got my Horn of Africa there. And then I've drawn the big, what I think looks like a bobbly head around the outside. And then we've got our bit that sits below the equator there. Now, if yours isn't perfect, don't worry, okay? This is going to be the basis of an amazing map. It's more important that we know where these places are. Right, the next continent that we're going to draw is we're going to draw South America. Now, again, South America, most of it sits below the equator. There's just a little bit above. So, on your atlas, I want you to find South America. That's this one, okay? And as you can see, from my map, one of the big countries that's in South America is Brazil. Now, Brazil, to me, again, it's got that point down the end, and then it's kind of bulges out a little bit. Some of it comes up above the equator and round. So I want you to draw, in fact, I've just realised it looks a bit like a bird's head if you turn it that way around. So I want you to have a go at drawing South America. Okay. Off you go. Well done, team. So we've now got 4 of the 7 major continents of the Earth drawn on our map. But we've definitely done the easier ones first, because now things get a little bit complicated above the equator in what we call the Northern Hemisphere. Now, the first thing that we're going to try and draw, we're going to try and draw North America. Now, North America sits above South America. So if this one was South America, this one here is North America. Now, North America, as you can see, stretches all the way from the top of the Earth right down and meets South America here. Now, it's quite complicated to try and draw this here. So just do your best, okay? I'm going to draw it as one great big sort of blob around there. And I'm going to try and make sure that I include little details like this, but I'm just going to do my best, okay? So I'm going to draw it. You have a go at drawing it. Unpause the video when you're ready. No, it wasn't my best drawing. However, it will do, all right? So this is the continent of North America. It was really hard because actually there were loads of different bits and bays and gaps at the top of Canada, but I've done my best. Now, the next continent that we're going to draw is Europe. Now, Europe sits in the middle and it sits above the continent of Africa. Now, Europe, again, is difficult because not only do we have the United Kingdom, the country you live in, but we also have lots of other kind of islands. And the other complicated bit about Europe is it actually joins our last continent, Asia. So what I'm going to do, I'll show you on the map which part is Europe. So Europe starts here with Iceland, and then we have the United Kingdom, and then it goes all the way to the borders here of Ukraine and Finland up here. Now, we then have this massive country, Russia. And Russia's complicated because part of it belongs to Europe, part of it belongs to Asia. But we're going to try and draw Europe as this bit here, first of all. Okay? Take your time, do your best. It's probably not going to look perfect. It doesn't matter. Right. So that one took me quite a long time. I imagine it might have taken you quite a long time, and it's definitely not perfect. But that is Europe. Now, the last continent that we need to draw is this one up here, and that's called Asia. So what we're going to do is we're just going to have a look at it on here. Asia is a massive continent because it has the whole of Russia in it. It has the whole of China in it, has the whole of India in it, comes all the way down here into Indonesia and Malaysia here. It's huge. It also includes this whole section here, which is Saudi Arabia and Syria and Lebanon, all sorts of countries. So essentially what we're going to do is we're going to try and draw the whole of Asia. Now, Asia's got some things that help us in that it's got this boot or this point that's India, and then it has these sort of skinny islands down there that are Indonesia and the Philippines. And then we come up past China and round to Russia. Basically, it's everything that's left. So, pause the video, draw your continent. Hi team, welcome back. So, you can see that I've now added the continent of Asia, and hopefully you have too. Now, the next job that we have is we need to label these continents. And the reason being, maps always need layers of information. Now, the first continent that we're going to label, we're going to start as we drew them, is Antarctica. So what I would like you to do is to take your ruler and a pencil and to draw a line for you to write your label on in Antarctica. I then want you to do the same thing in Africa, in Australasia, in South America, North America, Europe and Asia. So just draw a little line that you're going to put those labels on. I'm going to draw one now. I'll show you what I mean. And then you can do the same. So I'm just going to draw a little line there. You can see it on Antarctica, and that's where I'm going to put my label. So pause the video, add your line. Hey, welcome back. So now you've got your lines on your map. I'm going to take a pen, and it's up to you. You can do it in pencil if you want. And I'm going to add each of the labels. Now, each of these labels, they're actually names. So I'm pretty certain most of you know, but what needs to go at the start of a name? A capital letter. You are right. So I'm going to take my pen, and I'm going to start with Antarctica at the bottom. So I'm going to use a capital letter. And I'm going to add the label Antarctica, okay? So what I want you to do is to do the same thing, add your label Antarctica. I'm going to add all of the other labels while you do that. and then you're going to add them to your diagram. Okay, so while you guys have been adding your Antarctica label, I've been and added all of the others. So what we've got, and I'm going to start at the bottom, is we have the continent of Antarctica, begins with the letter A. Then we have the continent Australasia, which begins with the letter A. Then we have the continent Africa, again, begins with the letter A. Then we've got South America, because it's below the equator, most of it, and North America. We have Europe right in the middle, which is the continent that you live on. And then we've got Asia right at the top. Now I want you to pause the video, take your time, and write each of those labels out, remembering that you need a capital letter at the start of each one because it's a name, okay? Okay, so now what you've got is a beautiful world map. And we're going to use this world map as the centre of all the other work that we're going to do over the next few weeks. Now, I've decided I'm going to make my map pretty. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a coloured pencil and I'm going to colour each continent in a different colour. But the one thing I'm going to try and do, because we're going to add more information to this map next week, is I'm going to try and colour it in gently. I'm going to do light shading. So I'm going to pick my pencil, and I think I've decided I'm going to do Australasia, and I'm probably going to colour that in yellow. Okay, so I'm going to take my colour and I'm just going to shade across Australasia really gently, so that if I wanted to next week, I could write on top of it. Right, have a look there. Okay, so you can still see the label that I wrote really clearly because I didn't press down very hard with the pencil. I did it very gently. So what I'd like you to do now, I'd like you to go and colour each of your continents in a different colour. I'm going to pause the video, take your time. Welcome back. So you should now have a map that is coloured in. Each of the continents is a different colour. Each of them is labelled with their name, with a capital letter at the start. You've got the line that is the equator, and you've got this important line down the middle called the Greenwich Meridian. Now, that is an incredible effort today, guys, but it doesn't stop there. What I want you to do over the course of the next week is to try and learn the names of all the continents. And as a challenge, can you remember whether they are above the equator, so in the top half, or can you remember if they are below the equator? Now, for a continent like Africa, that one's quite tricky because actually some of it's above the equator, some of it's below. For this one, you would say it was both. But for somewhere like South America, only a little bit of it is above the equator, so we would consider that one to be below the line. Right, I have had so much fun today making this map. What I would love is for you to now take a photo of you holding your map and get your mum or your dad to upload it onto the Facebook page so I can see what you've done. And whatever you do, don't lose this, okay? Because this is going to be the basis for the rest of our project. Team, you've been amazing today. If you have any questions, then get mum or dad to send me a message on Facebook and I'll get back to you. Well done. See you next week for the Geography Classroom.